And at the evening offering I rose up from my humiliation with my garment and my cloak torn. I knelt upon my knees and spread out my palms to Yahweh my God. Ezra 9:5. They sit upon the ground, they are silent. The elders of the daughter of Zion. They have cast dust upon their heads. They have girded themselves with sackcloth. The virgins of Jerusalem have bowed their heads to the ground. Lamentations 2:10. To you, my Lord, belongs righteousness, but to us shame of face as on this day. To the men of Judah, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to all Israel, those near and those far away, in all the lands where you have driven them because of their unfaithful treachery, which they have committed against you. Daniel 9:7. By Ezra's time, Jerusalem was a small provincial city under Persian rule, part of the satrapy beyond the river. There were no idol-filled palaces or invading armies now, only Persian governors, tax collectors, and a fragile Jewish remnant trying to survive amid foreign neighbors. The grandeur of Solomon's kingdom was long gone. What remained was a community struggling to relearn what it meant to live as a covenant people in a world dominated by empire. Israel's story stood at a fragile turning point. The Babylonian exile had officially ended. Cyrus the Great of Persia had issued his decree around 538 BCE, allowing the Jewish exiles to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple, and under leaders like Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest, the altar and the temple had been restored by 516 BCE. The physical house of Yahweh once again stood in Jerusalem. But the spiritual condition of the people remained uncertain. Outwardly, the people had returned to their land, but inwardly, many hearts still wandered. More subtle compromises had replaced the old temptations of idolatry. Intermarriage with surrounding peoples, which diluted covenant identity and loyalty to Yahweh's Torah. Neglect of Torah instruction as generations raised in Babylon no longer knew the language or the commands fully. Apathy and self-interest as many prioritized personal comforts and rebuilding their own houses over rebuilding covenant life are echoed by the prophet Haggai. So when Ezra prayed, he was not surrounded by idols or armies, but by compromise. Ezra tore his garments not as a display of piety, but as a symbol of grief over the covenant's fracture. His body mirrored the nation's brokenness, kneeling, trembling, covered in dust. Likewise, in Lamentations, the elders sat on the ground in silence. The women bowed low, and the streets were heavy with sorrow. The city, once crowned with song, now whispers with lament. To sit in the dust in Hebrew culture is to accept the truth of one's lowliness before the Holy One. Dust remembers where we came from. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. Genesis 3:19. Yet dust also holds hope. For Yahweh once breathed his life into dust, shaping it into a living being. Thus confession in the covenant way is not despair, but a posture of return, lowering oneself so that Yahweh may lift one up again. It is not the self-loathing of guilt, but the self-emptying of surrender, where the remnant bows low to say, "You are righteous, Yahweh," and we are not. Yet we come. This prayer speaks to personal repentance and corporate humility, calling individuals, families, churches, and nations to kneel before Yahweh and confess where covenant faith has been neglected. It is a reminder that actual rebuilding begins in the dust, where humility meets mercy, and Yahweh's breath brings life again. Use it in times of national crisis or moral failure, church repentance gatherings, personal renewal and rededication, and any season where the heart must sit in the dust before standing again.
Yahweh, judge your ways all pass rightly, and Redeemer who bends low with compassion. We draw near to you as Ezra did, as Daniel did, as the elders of Zion did. With torn coverings and trembling hands, praise at the evening of our day, when the shadows stretch long and the stillness of your presence descends. We rise from the dust of our distractions. We open our palms toward you and speak. To you, Yahweh, belongs the straight way. To us belongs the lowering of face. We have strayed from the path, not only in open rebellion, but in the quiet turns of convenience that harden the heart. We have lifted our eyes to lesser lights and let the flame of your word grow dim. We have called your ancient boundary stones outdated and stepped across the fence of covenant to chase our own comfort. Our garments are torn in sorrow, our inner tents feel heavy with the weight of wandering. We have returned from exile in body, yet our heart tents have not yet turned fully towards your dwelling. Yahweh, we sit in the dust, not as the hopeless, but as those who remember your steadfast love. The soil beneath our knees bears witness. We were shaped from this dust, and only your breath can cause it to rise again. Turn your face toward us, Yahweh. Heal the hardness that makes us slow to humble ourselves, and the fear that keeps our turning shallow. Look upon the leaders who have built walls of position instead of altars of approach. Look upon our homes where the Shema has grown faint and the teaching of covenant has been traded for ease. You have walked straight in all your ways, your measures are true, your mercies are beyond measure. And you have said, return to me, and I will return to you. So we return, not standing, but kneeling, not defending, but grieving, not blaming, but belonging again. Wrap us in your compassion as with a new garment. Wash us with tears until our hearts are clear. Turn our mourning into the light of dawn. Raise the ruins of our hearts into firm foundation stones once more. Breathe, Yahweh, upon this dust, and make of it something living, steady and true.